In this video, I want to give you the programmatical representation of how to write your problem of binary classification. And in this video, actually, what I will try to do, I will try to give you the programmatical representation that you can use to convert a problem of binary classification in a Python programming language. So let us start. First of all, we know that in binary classification, what you have is you have some kind of example or instance or a data point. So let me write from your training data set. Okay. And your training data set will be a set. So I'm just going to make space for lots of data. I don't know if I'm going to be using all of that space or not. And your example would be actually a tuple. We have discussed that in the previous videos. So our one example or one instance or data point would actually be a tuple. And in this tuple, we would have a feature vector. And the second thing is we would have the answer, or what does that feature vector represent? So the actual answer or something like that. I will just write the answer. Okay. So I'm gonna take this feature vector. I'm gonna actually copy it using Control-C and then Control-V, and I'm gonna paste it down so that I can elaborate it further. So our feature vector, like we discussed, is that it would be a column vector, and that column vector would actually store the features of our data point. In our case, as an example, we have been taking an example of a picture of a cat, and let me draw again. So our feature vector, let us name it X, would be storing each of the intensities of the color from these boxes. So in our column vector, we want to store each of these values in our feature vector. So I'm just giving the representation. And then in Python programming language, we would have a library, NumPy. Okay. And using this particular library, we can actually define a column vector. Okay. But I'm just giving the detail. I'm just giving the review of how you can actually translate the concepts of mathematical in Python programming language. So in mathematics, you would have a column vector, which we would call feature vector, and we have to now translate this feature vector into Python programming language. And in Python programming language, we would have NumPy, and that NumPy library in Python programming language would give us the array, and that array is going to be used by us to store all the values of our feature vector. So, and the other thing is, our tuple over here also has, the other thing is the answer, or what does that feature vector represents. So that would be just a value. Okay, that would be just a value. So let's say if we were storing the features of a cat, then we would say, okay, then the other value, the answer would be 1, because what we have been doing so far is that we were saying, okay, in our case, we would say 1 for cat and 0 for non-cat. And since in this example, I am trying to store the features of the cat, so that is why I've said, okay, that would be 1. The value of the answer would be 1 in this case. So that would make our tuple. That would actually be our tuple over here. And actually in Python programming language, you would actually have the same thing like a tuple. And there are different libraries in Python that you can use to define tuples. Tuple T, which represents what the feature of a cat, and it would have X, and it would have the variable Y. So this would be a Python programming representation for our one instance or one data point. How about if we have lots of instances, like a training data set, and how would you define that? So the training data set, as the word describes, or in Python programming language, you would also be given something called the set that you can use to define all of a set of all of the training examples. And there's another thing in Python programming language, which is called a library actually, which is the pandas, is gonna give you uh, the functionality of the sets that you can use to store all of these data points. So you would be playing with the library NumPy to define the column vector, and you would be playing with the library pandas to define a set of that contains all of the training examples. So that would you be doing. So I'm just trying, so right now I would just be giving you a little demonstration, like the written demonstration. So you would say something like this. So you would say, okay, import pandas as PD, something like that. And you would say import NumPy as NP, and then what would you do is that you would have a picture, and there are ways where you can store a picture, but right now I'm just trying to be very basic, so I'm just going to give you a review. So you would be defining x is equal to np, that is our library, and the array, and there is a special syntax to define a column vector for that. You will be doing that in here, and then you would say, okay, y is equal to 1, because you would know that this is a training instance for the cat. And then you would say, okay, my training data set would be something like this. You would name it, I don't know, like this: train data is equal to pd dot. You would write the function that just supposedly our function is like, I don't know, the set, and then you would store. Oh, we missed a thing. Let me write it down. We missed a thing. Data point. That's an underscore. Data point is equal to x and y, and just like that, you would be making lots of data points. So in our case, that would be our data point, and you would have more examples over here. Okay, that's my second data point, and this time, this is not a picture of a cat. So if it's not a picture of a cat, so I'm gonna just 0. So now that you have, let's say we have not true, we have 2 data points, and we want to store these data points as tuple. So we have used we have actually stored one of the data points here, and now we are gonna store another data point. We're gonna name it data point 2, and we are going to store that. Let me write this down. That would be our data point 2. So now that our training data points are 2, we're going to store all of these data points and make a data set out of these data points. So what we're going to do is that we're going to create a set, and we're going to store all of these data points, data point 1 and data point 2, in that training data set. And if we have more over here, like x2, x3, y3, then you would be storing all of those data points and make a set out of all of these data points. So that is just a general idea. It's not a specific, these statements over here are not specific. So I'm just giving you how would that work. You would be defining libraries that you're going to use, and these libraries would provide you with functions that you're going to use to define sets, tuples, arrays. Okay, so up above in your Python program, you're going to be defining the libraries, and then you're going to use the functions in those libraries to define your mathematical concepts in Python programming language.